Hello everyone, I'm Ryan from West Ham Fan TV. I'm here at Reids restaurant in Billericay tonight in Essex, and I'm joined by former Wales international and West Ham striker John Hartson. John, thanks for joining us, mate.
You're welcome, Ryan. Pleasure.
First of all, John, before we move on to talk about West Ham, Wales, as is International Week, you must be over the moon at the moment with Wales.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time coming. 58 years it is since we last qualified. It was actually 1958. Wales got to the quarter-final of the World Cup in Sweden. Lost 1-0 to Brazil, a Pelé header. And it's been a long time coming. If you think of all the players we've had over the years, the great players like the Southalls and the Hugheses and the Ratcliffes and the Rushes, and more recently the likes of the Bellamys and the Gary Speeds and obviously myself and Mark Delaney. We've had some great players, and it would have been a crying shame really if Wales had never got that again, and it was looking very bleak for a long time. We were unable to do it, qualify, but this group of players under Chris Coleman they've come together as a group. They've galvanised themselves. Chris has done an unbelievable job. When you think he took the job from Gary Speed, who was doing such great things with them, God rest his soul. So it's credit to Chris and credit to this group of players. Obviously they have the world beater in Gareth Bale, who's just a phenomenal player. Yeah. So it's great. It's a great time. All the fans in Wales are buzzing over it.
It's one more point from 2 games, so you should be there.
We should be okay. Yeah, we got Bosnia away in October, which is a difficult one because Bosnia will still think they can finish third. Yeah. They'll be battling it out with Israel to get third in the group. Obviously, they go into a playoff, and then we finish with Andorra home, who have played 8, lost 8, conceded 42, scored 1. So that is a winnable game for us. So we're very dependent that on that particular game we can start booking our tickets to France.
Well, the thing is, it'd be nice to have another home nations in the Euros, because for England it gets boring being out there on your own, It does get boring. Yeah. But John, moving on to West Ham, I mean, you joined us in '97 from Arsenal.
Yeah.
I mean, leaving Arsenal, was it a big decision to join West Ham, and what made you want to join West Ham? Because leaving a big club like Arsenal, and we was in a relegation battle as well. Yeah,
well, what it was at the time, Arsene Wenger came in to become manager of Arsenal, and it was myself and Righty, Ian Wright, and Dennis Bergkamp played in the hall behind us. I enjoyed playing with them players. Fantastic. I was 19, 20 years of age. I was very, very young, and I was learning a lot of them too. But there was one particular day where I received a phone call off Harry Redknapp. And at that time, I'm talking about me and Righty played and Dennis in the hall. I found myself out of the team for a couple of weeks, arguably to the best 2 in Europe at that time. Obviously Dennis being the great Dutch player he was. And Righty was the current England number 9. He was the England centre forward. And Harry said to me, he says, look, John, he said, I could really do with someone like yourself. He said, big, strong, aggressive. He says, I've got great wingers. I'm going to buy Trevor Sinclair. I've got Stan Lazaridis. He said, we've got good young players coming through. And I'll give you the number 10 shirt, and I'll build a team around you. He says, I'm going to go and sign Paul Kitson, who was in a similar situation as myself at Newcastle. Wasn't playing every week. So I thought to myself, West Ham, great club, good London club. I wouldn't have to move very far. Actually, I didn't move at all because I was living in Brooklands Park in Hertfordshire. So I stayed there. And then I ended up signing for West Ham, which was for £3.2 million, which was a record. It was West Ham's highest they'd ever spent on a player. And I'd also broke the record at Arsenal, 2.5 million, which they paid for Ian Wright from Crystal Palace. So I'd equaled the record at Arsenal for a teenager. And then I broke the record at West Ham. And when I arrived at West Ham, I just felt as if I'd had a new sort of lease of life because I was playing every week. I scored on my home debut against Spurs. I got above Sol Campbell and powered in the header. I soon realised what it would mean to the supporters to score 1 against Tottenham, and secondly the way that I scored. I was aggressive. It was from a corner. I got above big Sol Campbell, who was a monster of a man. So I endeared myself to the crowd straight away, if you like. I ran away, I kissed the badge, and all that, which is not great. A lot of people kiss the badge. But it really meant something for me to be at West Ham. You know, I realised the passion in the crowd. We were in a dogfight. We needed wins. So it wasn't a particular difficult decision to leave Arsenal. Looking back, I left West Ham in 97 and they won the double. I left Arsenal in 97 and Arsenal went on to win the double in 98. And I had 3 years on my contract when I left them. So maybe that's a decision with hindsight. I can look back and think, well, I could have had a double winners medal, you know, in my pocket now. But I might not have played games. And I wanted to play. I always think it's important for a young footballer to play. You know, you train all week to peak on a Saturday. And to my credit, I didn't want to be in behind Bergkamp. I didn't want to be in behind Wright. I wanted to play. And Harry gave me that opportunity to go and play for West Ham every single week. And it turned out to be a great move for me.
Yeah, I mean, you scored 5 goals in 11 games and you sort of hit a good partnership with Kitson. I mean, it looked like you've been playing together for years. I mean, what was it? How did you get that partnership going? Well,
Paul was a great lad for one. He was very down to earth, like myself. He was a Geordie lad from a council estate, you know, like myself. Very humble, very normal, and we hit it off straight away. And people maybe underestimate what Paul Kitson did that year. People talk about, oh, John Hartson did very well, but Paul Kitson scored 8 goals. And I got 5. We got 13 between us.
I think I remember he got a hat-trick against Sheffield Wednesday. We beat 5-1 at home,
and I got 2. Yeah, I remember that one. Actually, I set him up for the 3rd. I might have shot and got the hat-trick myself.
Oh, you're taking all the credit now, John.
No, but we also went to Leicester in a midweek game where Richard Hall, I have to say, the big centre-back, he was outstanding. We nicked the game 1-0. John Moncur got our only goal. So we had some really big results during that, which we had to keep us up. You know, West Ham were in a similar situation as what QPR were in last season, in terms of we really desperately needed points. You probably have the stats. I don't know how many games that we won at the end of that 97-98 season, but we managed to stay up. And my partnership with Paul Kitson, we never particularly worked on it. Sometimes it just clicks. You know, they talk about Cotty and McAvenny. I'm sure Tony and Frank will tell you they never worked on nothing in training. But when they got on the pitch, you know, they just fed off each other. It just Keegan Toshak, Wright Merson. You know, sometimes it's just telepathic. You hit it off. And me and Paul, we took the glory really with all the goals. But, you know, you forget how we defended. You forget Rio Ferdinand was coming through, making his debut. Young Frank, Joe Cole, John Moncur, Ian Bishop. Dixie was class at left back. He could hardly walk, Dixie, but playing on one knee.
He's still the same.
Yeah, but he was great, you know, a ferocious character. Loved by the crowd, obviously. We had Tim Breaker at the back, right back, and we had the likes of Potsy. Big Ludo played in goal. And we added Stevie Lomas, who eventually became captain. He was a really good leader of men. And that was a great time, and I genuinely really, really enjoyed my time, you know, initially at West Ham. The first 18 months, I could not stop scoring goals. And my father, who's watched me play probably in about 1,000 games, the 500 that I played as a professional, and all the other games I played as a junior growing up in Swansea. And my dad says to me, although I scored over 100 goals for Celtic, he says, them 18 months at West Ham, he says, was the best I've ever seen you play. He says, at times you were unplayable. People just couldn't cope with your strength, your power, your physicality. And he actually says to this day that them 18 months at West Ham was the best that he's ever seen me play. Which, if my dad said that, was a good judge, who's not just going to tell me things for the sake of it, then obviously it stands up, you know.
I mean, one game that stands out at the end of that season, you touched on it earlier, the Spurs game, the 4-3 at home. Obviously, you got your first goal. I mean, what do you remember from that night?
Well, I remember that, I think it was David Howells, his father had passed away in the afternoon. And it was a rainy night. It was a terrible, terrible evening. The ball was swaying everywhere. It was bucketed down with rain. And I remember, I think I might have scored the first goal, and I ran towards the crowd. Paul Kitson got a goal as well. And right towards the end of the game, it was pretty close. You know, it's a derby. Spurs must have had 5,000 away fans. It was a great atmosphere. under the lights at the bowling ground, obviously. And then the ball came into me, into the box, probably one of the last kicks of the game, 2 or 3 minutes to go. And I felt my legs go from underneath me. And then I went back, and the referee pointed to the spot. I'd won us a penalty. And then probably, without sounding too patronising, in any game that I've ever played in, and I played with some great penalty takers. I played with Reids, I played with Henrik Larsson, I played with Craig Bellamy for Wales, and they all took penalties. But that penalty that night, 3-3, 4 minutes into injury time, and Julian Dix stepped up and he just smashed it into the roof of the net. What a penalty under that type of pressure. And we won the game 4-3. And one of the things I can remember, it was my home debut. We'd lost to Derby on the Saturday. My proper debut. I got booked and suspended for a clash with Stimac, who I never really got on with, the Croatian centre-back. Yeah. We'd had a bit of previous. But I remember I was due a suspension, but I could play the next game. And one particular memory for me was I went on Sky afterwards and I won man the match. I got the bottle of champagne. And I said I would like to dedicate this to David Howells in the Spurs dressing room. My heart goes out to his family, and I'd like to send all the players condolences. And for a 21-year-old, I'm 40 years of age now, to have had the presence of mind to have been able to say that. So I'm very, very proud, not so much of my performance and the win that night, which was much needed, but the way that I handled the win and the euphoria and the excitement, you know, just to find it within myself to pay respects to David Howells, who actually, I think, I'm not sure if he played in the game, but I know that he lost his dad on that particular day.
I think he did play.
So, you know, people were, you know, going mad over that. That was a great touch, you know, so pleased with that.
I mean, at the end of that season, we finished 12th. I mean, when you joined, we was 18th at the time, so it was a great end to the season.
Yeah, I actually didn't realise we finished that high up the table, Very good.
No, but it's... And then moving on to the next season, you sort of carried on where you finished off. You just couldn't stop scoring.
Scored on the opening day of the season against Barnsley. Myself and Frank, we beat them 2-1. Barnsley's first ever game in the Premier League. My sister travelled up from Swansea 5 or 6 hours in the car to watch me. Boiling hot day.
Yeah, I remember
the blue kit. Remember the blue kit?
No sponsor.
That's right, yeah. But no, we opened up really well that day, and then I think we played Tottenham midweek again. We beat them 2-1, and the ball come across, and I sort of hit it into the ground and into the roof of the net. I think Al Berkovic actually scored that night. We beat Spurs 2-1 midweek game. And then I think I got that season. I think I got was it 15 goals? I think I got that
in the league. But
league goals.
In all competitions.
I got 24 in total, which was the most I'd ever scored in the Premier League. I got 30 at Celtic, but my biggest return was 24, and I think I was 1 goal behind Andy Cole for the Golden Boot, and I missed the last 4 games through suspension because I was I wasn't dirty, but I was like, I had loads of energy, and my game, I'd clean Mick Arfoot's boots at Luton, and Mick was a monster. You know, Mick was so aggressive, and I wanted to be like one of my heroes, you know, and I'd go across people and maybe leave my boot in, and I was very cynical, you know, and I picked up quite a lot of bookings. And obviously I calmed it down a little bit as I got on throughout my career, realised that you can't go on like this because you're missing too many games, blah, blah, blah. But I'd had a suspension, missed the last 4 games of that season, and I still ended up with 24 goals, which was great. And I think I was linked with the likes of Manchester United, I was linked with other clubs, but I wasn't interested because I had a 5-year contract. I was living in Brookmans Park. I was a member of a great golf club. I had a great relationship with Harry, great relationship with the players. I was probably 21, 22 years of age in the form of my life. I had a beautiful wife from Wales, planning on having kids, nice house in Brookmans Park, and everything was there for me. Everything was set up.
I was going to say, I know you said your dad said it, but do you feel you was playing your best football of your career up to that point?
It was right up there. It was right up there because I think the stats tell their own story. You know, 24 goals in the Premier League. That is what Van Persie does nowadays. You know, that's what Henry did. So when you look at the names that have got that amount of goals, and I was doing it for West Ham, you know, obviously my performances were very, very good. you know, but I also scored 100 goals at Celtic. Now I know the level of opposition at Celtic is nowhere near as strong as the English Premier League. You're playing against the Scottish sides, you're playing with 11 other internationals, you dominate possession, you get more chances than the opposition. At home, you play in front of 60,000 unbelievable fans. So it's easier to score goals in Scotland than down south. But yeah, I was probably as prolific and in great form at that particular time as what I was at any time.
I mean, you mentioned a few of the youngsters like Frank and Rio. I mean, they was young when you was there. I mean, did you know, of seeing them in training every day, that they was going to go to the very top, international and club level? Yeah,
I thought they would, but the big one was Joe Cole. They all thought that he was going to be the one that was going to be the next Gascoigne. You know, he was the one that was going to be the next, you know, top player. Now, Joe made an exceptional career for himself, you know, but lacked that little bit of pace. You know, he was more silky, wasn't he? He could go past a player, but at 14, 15, they reckon Joe Cole was as good as anything West Ham had ever seen, coming through their ranks.
I remember that Youth Cup final.
Yeah, and he was so great on the ball. He could beat a player. He used to get back, defend. But he was actually Frank, who maybe at that age wasn't the most gifted technically. Rio had everything. Rio had pace. Harry called him a Rolls Royce, you know, and that's exactly what he was. All Rio needed to do was bulk up a little bit, learn the game, and then he went to Leeds and went on to Man United, 80 caps for England. He's been a wonderful player, and a great guy as well. They were all great fellas actually. But it was actually Frank who, Frank Lampard just worked his socks off. His father was assistant manager, and he'd be out there in the afternoons doing his sprints, working on his finishing.
Because he went on loan to Swansea.
He went on loan to Swansea before I got there, that was. But then when I was there, he was pretty much in the team regular. And then he had his big move to Chelsea. I think there were times where he wasn't in great form at Chelsea, but Ranieri stuck with him, kept playing him, kept believing in him, and he's gone on to break all sorts of records. And what a career Frank Lampard has had. You know, the goals that he's scored from midfield is freakish, really. You know, but probably at West Ham, they probably didn't see the best of him. They saw him as a youngster coming through. You know, but it was Frank, it was Rio, and it was Joe. Younger than that again, then there was Defoe, who was 13, 14. There was Michael Carrick, who was 14, 15. I never quite got to play with them. It was them three, but they were really good young players. And Harry would bring them over on a Friday to join in the five-a-sides, and you could see, you know, little bits of skill that they were showing. But it was Rio who actually broke in. I think Rio made his debut.
Was it the Sheffield Wednesday 5-1 game?
I don't know, but I'm certain that he made his debut during that season that I was there.
Yeah.
But he was class. He was class, you know. Me and Niall actually got on really well, and it was never personal. And that day it could have been Rio, could have been Frank, could have been Righty, Monks, Bish, anybody that incident occurred with. It could have been them that got the boot, you know.